Hey everyone, welcome back to the Neurocollective Podcast brought to you by Bagnell Brain Center. We are here in the studio this morning ready for another hidden conversation, and I'm here with Doc Bagnell. Good morning.
Good morning. It's a hidden conversation. I like that.
Yeah, a hidden conversation. So today we're talking about the hidden conversation between your brain and your heart. This is going to be a good one. And I want you to imagine, have you ever had that sense of your heart racing? Maybe it was before an important conversation. Maybe it was after a difficult conversation. Maybe it was during a physical event, but things that you wonder, well, why is my heart racing at this level, right? So we're going to address it today because we want you to understand that your nervous system helps to shape heart rate, blood pressure, emotion, as well as resilience. So let's get started. So let's talk about the central idea, Doc, about this two-way conversation. Give us a little bit of insight. Our listeners love the science that you teach us. So give us some science behind what's happening when our heart races.
Yeah, well, they're not two separate systems. And that's one of the things people would, of course, say, well, I understand that, you have a heart and brain, but we really don't necessarily, I would say, consider that they're really working together. My heart is my heart. I go to the cardiologist. My brain is my brain. I go to the neurologist if I have some issue that I think is with my brain. But in fact, they're working together to control each other. And what do I mean by that? Well, without the cardiovascular, without the heart pumping and pressure and the heart rate going up, you're not getting blood flow to your head, which is the most important place. So the brain is saying, I need to get blood to me first because I'm the one who needs oxygen and I need glucose and I need the things that are in the blood more than almost anyone else in the body to stay alive, number one. Yeah. So we need that whole system, right, to get the blood, pump it up there. But the brain is also saying, well, I need to help be having this hidden conversation with the heart, the cardiovascular system, so that I can tell it, give it feed forward information to tell it when I'm standing up or when I'm doing something strenuous or when, that I need to get more blood flow to me. So I have to have a conversation that way. So it's a two-way conversation. Mm-hmm. It's affecting breathing, circulation. It's affecting blood pressure and heart rate, as I mentioned. And, at the same time, blood vessels are providing information back. So there's information coming into the brain through the nervous system, and there's information going back out to control the set point, if you will, and then the adjustments we need to make. So that's kind of the way we want to start thinking about it, not two separate systems.
Right. Yeah. So in a way, what we're saying is that the brain speaks to the heart, but the heart also speaks to the brain. Right. Just like we've had the episodes before where we're talking about the gut. A lot of times it's the brain gut connection, but we forget that there's also the gut brain connection. Right. So there's a two-way conversation there too. So the same thing here. So let's talk about how does the brain change the heart? That I have a story about that on my side. So I have a little bit of understanding, but for the listeners, help us understand what are some of the mechanisms or where in the brain is some of this, let's call the autonomic functioning happening.
Yeah, that's where we're introducing the next character in this act here. And that is the autonomic system, which is part of your nervous system. It's something that we call the autonomic system. It's a functional part, right? If you're in a dissection, there's just the nervous system, the brain, but we break it down into the central and the peripheral and the autonomic system, and then even break it down further, that autonomic system into the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems, one for fight or flight and the other one for rest and digest. So we're introducing the autonomic system. Bum, bum, bum. This character comes out of the shadows. And this is the character that's just listening to all the conversations. Right. And it's helping to adjust from the nervous system side, adjust things downstream. But he has to hear information coming from downstream, from the body. And in this case, from the heart, from the cardiovascular function. So we'll mention this word baroreceptors, which are pressure receptors like barometric, right? That's a pressure, barometric pressure receptors in your vascular system, in your lungs, in the heart, in the walls. And they're signaling back through the nerves into the brain stem, the autonomic system hub, right? That's the actual location. And there's some areas in the cortical area that affect the autonomics, like in the frontal area and the limbic area, which are going
Yep.
to affect a downward influence, right? So, what do I mean by that? Well, let's say you get scared and then your heart starts to race. And then your limbic area, which got scared, got frightened, right? Or your amygdala and your limbic area, then your brain, your frontal lobe says, no, 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 that's nothing. It was just a backfire of a car. And then, I mean, how fast does this happen? Boom. And I'm shocked and it's going. And then
Yes.
all of a sudden, no, that's no big. And then I'm calming right down. So the loop is very small. The control is very quick. The latency is very small, meaning it doesn't take long. But when people have problems with these systems, the autonomic system to the cardiovascular system, then they have something that goes on and they can't stop it. It can't
Yeah.
re-regulate. So
Right.
this autonomic system, and research has shown in this system that it's sensing this cardiovascular function, like we said, through blood vessels, through chemistry and chemoreceptors and baroreceptors. It's a beautiful, complex orchestration that really you're completely unaware of when everything's right. And
Mhm.
everything's happening in sync like an orchestra, like you mentioned.
Mhm. Well, it's really remarkable, and it reminds me of, like, even like when we're driving our car, right? We have the gas pedal and we have the brake pedal. Obviously, we don't want our have our foot on the gas and the brake at the same time, or
Doesn't work well.
that doesn't work well. But also to your point, even if I were scared, let's say there was an animal that was going to go across the front of my car, I would quickly hit the brakes, in order to stop me from hitting the animal. My reaction would also be my heart rate will had to move very quickly. My brain and my heart had to both move very quickly to create that action. But then little by little, it's like, okay, we missed the animal. He's safe. We're safe when we go on. And then everything settles back down again. So I
Yeah.
feel like there's multiple things that we could all relate to where that happens, where the heart rate responds to the brain signaling we need to act. Right. So that's what you're
Right.
saying. Right. So we're going to hold on to that thought, listeners, because this is an important component of, how your brain and body speak to each other. And then sometimes when
Yeah.
that communication gets distorted. Right. So we're going to get into
Yes.
that. So let's talk about it. Just going through our notes here. So
Well,
what
let's
else is,
mention this because you have this before you go on. Maybe you
yeah.
were about to mention is that in that example you gave, which is really good, and there are people that suffer with dysautonomia like POTS,
Yep.
right? You can ask what triggered the acceleration of my heart rate. I think, and
Yes.
that's right there. What response is appropriate? So we talked about these pressure receptors. Those are responding like when I change position, I'm laying down and I stand up, or I'm laying down and I sit up, right? Or
Hmm.
I'm standing up and I squat down to do something and then I get up. Those are pressure changes in the vessels
Yep.
and they're going to send certain signals. But if I'm in my car, just sitting in my car, and an animal runs out in front of the car, let's say I'm not even driving, there's no change in my movement of my body. My body's in one position. So that's a different cause of acceleration, fear, right?
Yes.
It's a different response through the nervous system to the cardiovascular system. So you have different responses, and you've been very helpful in working with our clients in this, dealing with POTS and dysautonomia, to separate the two, because
Hmm.
one is actually part of the problem that needs to be rehabilitated in the baroreceptor and the neurology and the cardiovascular. The other one is not. It's more in the software, and that
Correct.
is the cortical area, the frontal and the emotional, which do not know how to maintain a control on that. And so now they become part of the problem,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
they're causing, I feel the problem again. Maybe I need to go to the emergency room. But
Yes.
you got to remember that there's different triggers for what's going on. One of them related to the cardiovascular brain connection, the other one more related to the brain connection, still cardiovascular, but it's from the top down.
Right. Yeah. So there's the emotional component to this, right? The psycho
Yes.
emotional component, which is very strong. In my case, listeners who've been on the Neurocollective have heard the story, but just short version of that, having dealt with balance issues many years ago, that wouldn't abate many, many, many years ago. And then realizing that a good 50, maybe 60% of that chronic balance issue had to do with my emotional state because I was going through something very challenging at that time. And it was creating a lot of anxiety. It was creating a lot of disruption to my nervous system, a lot of dysregulation to my nervous system, which of course activated or reactivated an issue I had in my vestibular system. And the body reacts and responds to important matters in life, right? That require that level of attention. But if it's chronic and we can't seem to let it go emotionally, or we don't have better coping mechanisms or a better way to handle creating that regulation of a nervous system, even in the midst of the challenges, then of course the chronic conditions of our body or those weaknesses are going to be more elevated and more pronounced. So
Yeah.
I understand personally as well as we do professionally that the emotional state that we carry ourselves in will drive a lot of these conditions. And so when we do work with our clients that are dealing with dysautonomia, balance issues, and POTS, things like of this nature, I talk a lot at the beginning of the emotional component of the mindset piece and how to gain some agency back for themselves, to have some more control, even while we're working on the nervous system and neurological structures, right? The pieces, the functional aspect that needs to be addressed. They've got
Right.
their part to do so that it continues to improve, right? So that it continue and it has the best opportunity to resolve, right? And feel better about, the condition. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because the next point in our notes is the importance of understanding how stress, emotion affects a racing heart, right? Because it does. Yeah. Anything you want to add to
That's
that?
right. Well, that's really one of the keys is when we're helping someone to recover is really starting to separate those two, as you mentioned, and helping them to have an awareness that that's a part of it. Because a person might think,
Yeah.
no, 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 it's just my problem. They don't realize that they're either adding to their problem or they're helping to mitigate their problem. And actually, we
Yeah.
have a client even currently that you and I both feel she's very strong in the foundation of her mindset, and it's going to help her to overcome that. And we've had people
Yes.
in the past like that. I can think of another client, very strong in that the positive affect and able
Yes.
to apply that in a way to help her overcome as we're doing the training. And we've had the converse, unfortunately, where people do not have that ability, even with some coaching or with some, they're not maybe not open to it. So you need to be aware of it. Number one, that's what the
Mhm.
podcast is helping this hidden conversation that these two things, the emotional state, the mental, the mindset, plays a role in even the functional problem that might be there between the brain and the heart. And
Yep.
so when you're aware now, okay, now let me take some coaching so that I might make a correction on the field, right? I might have a way to course correct in the midst of a crisis. Or so
Mhm.
now you're starting to make that correction. And guess what? As in a player, you're starting to perform a little bit better and a little
Yes.
bit better and a little bit more. And as we get a little bit by a little bit, you have eventually have quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned those couple of clients, and we've had many more like them. But they come to mind, and the way I was speaking about it to you the other day when we were having this conversation is that one of the things that I'm looking for when I'm coaching someone is I'm looking for their future pacing questions. Right? They're asking about future activities of when they can return to play. Right? When can they return to the things that they want to do in this life and the things that make them happy and bring them joy. And so that's an indicator to me that someone really is ready to be better. They just need guidance and they need, the interventions that we provide, especially if they've gone through other aspects already and they've tried other modalities. And so when they're not asking those questions or when they're perseverating on their symptomology or the story of how they got there and they keep going around that mountain, so to speak, that's an indicator to me, not that the person can't get better, but that the person is not quite ready to be better. And that's a big statement. And I'm not saying that's across the board true for everyone, but in our experience, that has been true. And it's proven, unfortunately, that that's been the case. And then also positively that that's been the case. So we come in to provide the interventions and the guidance in the areas that they need on the functional metabolic side, but they have full reign and agency over their mind and their thought patterns and then together we get to formulate what's the next chapter look like. And this is another important
Yes.
point that others are listening, and I was having this conversation with someone just yesterday afresh that When you've been in a chronic state, and today we're talking about the heart and the brain, but when you've been in a chronic state of ill health, it's easy to have an identity around that. And then the other thing is it's easy to be kind of thinking over and over in your mind, well, I can't wait till I get back to how I used to be. I just long to get back to how I used to be. And we get that. We understand that that makes sense. The challenge with that is that what if the brain and the body can't completely return back to how it once was? Right. And that can create a lot of disappointment for the person who's seeking their recovery. So I invite them to consider what their brain and body can do next. What is the opportunity for them to experience a new level of health and well-being and stability and strength that may look a little bit different than they were before their event, or what the cascade of events that happened that led them to where they are now. So I feel
Yeah.
like the combination of future pacing without looking back and saying, oh, I want to be how I was before, and the mindset of I'm recreating my well-being, I'm recreating my strength and my stability. Those two, that's a good combination when we're working with someone and all the things that we know how to, for them to have. It's a perfect formula for success. And it's been proven in the clinic setting.
Yeah, that's very good. I mean, you cause me to think about people as we get older, like I am, right? As you get older, and some people end up living so much in the past. Well, it was so much, like we would say, they don't make them like they used to. It was so much
I
better back
used to
then. But
be able to
sometimes
do
that it
this.
becomes,
Yeah.
yeah, but it becomes misery for some people where they're like, oh,
Well, that's the
everything,
point.
it's nothing like it
Yes,
used to be. Like it, no, you have to live now and you have to live forward.
that's right.
So, and not so far forward that you're like, I don't know. Oh, I'm so worried about what's going to happen. No, no, in the present. So
Yes,
I don't know. That's just a real world kind of experience, unfortunately, for a lot of people. And when you're suffering and you're younger, it's a bit different. It's a different context. And we can glean something. I know you use that word a lot. We can glean something from that. If I'm living in the past of what was, I may not be able to get my foot off second base to get to third.
correct.
Right. So, I know that there's a lot of studies done with psychological stress, acute stress, measuring heart rate variability. So, if
Hmm.
we're talking about how do we really know about this hidden conversation, how can we kind of peel back the curtain or pull back the curtain, excuse me, lift up the hood, whatever you want to say, and get an idea into what's going on with my brain and heart hidden conversation? We're going to use the acronym HRV.
Hmm.
HRV, heart rate variability.
Yeah,
And I
love
know
it.
that you look at yours and I actually look at mine every day. I'm really not obsessed with it. I like to see, oh, how was the quality of that sleep? It's not just the amount of time, but it's also what was my HRV like? Is my HRV going up or
Right.
is it going down based on things? And it's an indicator of the autonomic responsiveness, meaning the brain to heart, heart to brain. It's an indicator of how responsive it is, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
this is telling me how flexible that system is. Can it handle more stress today? Right.
Hmm.
So HRV is really an excellent measurement for that. And that data has to be interpreted properly in the context.
Yeah. Well, there's in my notes here, we were talking about HRV earlier, and there's a lot of things that HRV provides information about, right? It provides information about vagal modulation of the heart. So HRV is influenced by multiple factors, things like breathing, sleep, your age, your fitness level, if you're sick or well,
Mhm.
medications that you might be on, your physical posture, and even the time of day, right? Because your HRV is going to fluctuate throughout the day. I mean, it makes sense, right? Because your heart variability should vary throughout the day. So, yeah, those are multiple factors. And if you do have a wearable device, which a lot of people do these days, there are good indicators to be able to see, where you land in that. And
Yeah,
there's breath work
absolutely.
that helps to elevate it, all the different things. We should have a whole podcast just on HRV because there's a lot that I've
I
learned and
think
I know
so.
you know too. So we'll do that.
Yeah.
So let's go into the next section. When the conversation between the brain and the heart becomes dysregulated. I know we've kind of touched on it, but listen to this list and see if this makes sense as the listeners, right? So someone may experience a racing heart when standing, lightheadedness, blood pressure instability, exercise intolerance, meaning you try to work out and you can't make it, right? It's not going to work out, fatigue, heart palpitations, along with shortness of breath, and a prolonged recovery after activity. And prolonged recovery after activity would be like, way longer than you anticipate after whatever you engaged in. So these symptoms are symptoms that seem to be concurrent with conditions like dysautonomia or POTS, but also things that affect the endocrine system and anemia, for example, which I had many years, as you know, and my heart rate was really dysregulated for a good 25 to 30 days in that episode. That was a long time ago. But I have had, experiences with this. So can you share with us a little bit about like why this is happening? Why is this happening? I mean, there's multiple factors, but where in the brain is this connected to the heart?
I'm going to try to keep it really general. So again, the disclaimer is if you're someone who is a medical person or cardiovascular physician
Yes.
and you have good knowledge of it, this is going to be below your pay grade
Sure.
because we just want to kind of, so some things are going to sound like, well, that could be more accurate. Yeah, I could be as technical as anyone, but let's make it digestible. Okay. So we're going to think about the nervous system, the brain, this brain stem spinal cord sending out signals and receiving information back so the brain can interpret things. One of those systems bringing information in is the cardiovascular system, as we mentioned. Nerves directly into the heart and from the heart going right back into the brain stem.
Mhm.
Now, the nervous system is always on. The nervous system is always on, right? It doesn't shut down like the power in some of our equipment. I turn the power off, this big 220, boom, and it shuts down the power. The brain never shuts down. So it's always operational. So is the heart. And this is obvious to most people. Now,
Right.
since it's always on, the on signal keeps the heart and the nervous, it's all going. But we do have like the gas is always on, or like your car is idling. Now we might not say gas, we might say the electric is always on in your car.
That's true. Yeah.
So, but the car is on, it's idling. This is the old fashioned car now. The newer cars go into a stop the electric, but I'm not going to get into that because I don't know that. So let's say the car is on, you're sitting at a light and it's just idling. Your nervous system is always idling, but it has a brake. Your nervous system has a brake. It doesn't turn off, but it has a brake. The brake is primarily the vagus nerve system, the vagal complex in the brain stem. It's up higher. It's inside my skull. But in that little area of the brain stem, there's an area getting signals coming back in. And if it detects the signal says, hey, the pressure is off, I may have changed body position, I need to get more blood flow to the head. Think about the old seesaw or teeter-totter.
Right.
So right, the blood pressure is low because I just stood up because I was laying down. I need my blood pressure to come up quickly. So now the heart rate goes up and the heart beats a little bit faster, 4, 5, 6 beats, not 30 beats. And then the blood pressure comes up and the heart re-regulates. It's all through that vagal system. The vagal system is the brake slowing the heart back down. The acceleration happens because of that interplay. We need the acceleration at times, right? I'm running, I'm walking, going upstairs here outside of our studio, our office, but I also need the brake so that when I get upstairs and I'm just walking in my car, my heart doesn't keep going up, keep going. No, that was nothing. We didn't need too much. Let's put the brake on. So the brake is the vagal system. And that's why people doing some kind of vagal activation can help lower a heart rate that's going up and it shouldn't be. The vagal system can break down, then the brainstem can become weaker, and now we can't control that heart rate acceleration.
Correct.
So that's the simple view of it, but it should give you a good picture.
Yeah. No, I love that. And that's an important thing. So we can have a sense of where this mechanism is coming from and then also what we can do about it. As we're thinking about this, we always want to notice patterns, right? We want to look at, the patterns of what's happening in our physiology, our nervous system, not just our symptoms, but we want to look at our symptoms and see, okay, what triggered it? There's a couple questions, notice what happens before your heart changes, right? So things like, did you stand up? Did you miss a meal, right? Did you sleep poorly the night before? Did you become overheated? People don't equate with temperature changes on how the heart might also react to that. Did you feel startled? That's an obvious one. Did you experience pain? Also sort of obvious, right? The heart kind of engages when we're in pain. Did you enter a crowded environment? That doesn't always change a heart rate for someone, but for some people it does. Did you begin worrying about the sensation itself, right? So it can create a kind of a loop, right? A pattern that gets on a loop. And until we interrupt that loop with awareness, we might just be thinking, well, this is just happening, right? It's just happening out of nowhere.
Really good.
right? And it's
Very
not
good.
happening out of nowhere. It's happening from someplace, and there's a pattern. And pattern recognition, I use a lot in coaching because it brings that awareness into real time, right? Because we could have
Yeah.
an awareness about something, it's knowledge. But when we're looking at patterns, now we're becoming these like sleuth masters, right? I don't know if that's right, but like investigators. And we're looking for the patterns that's happening in our physiology and our neurology. And why does that matter? It matters because then you can communicate better with your practitioners, the people who are guiding you. But it matters because you can start feeling a little more resolved in, okay, I don't need to be afraid of this
Correct.
heart palpitation in this moment because it's a pattern that I need to recognize. Now, we're not saying if you have heart issues that don't go seek help, right? I mean, if you feel like you're in an emergency situation, of course, please go seek help. But, we encounter our clients all the time where they have these heart changes because of the dysregulated nervous system. They see the cardiologist. They go to the ER multiple times because of the heart. That's the thing that takes them there, only to walk out of the emergency room with a clean bill of health. At least from the cardiologist's standpoint, their heart is fine. All the scans come
Yeah.
back fine. Everything's fine. So clearly in these cases, the heart is responding to the nervous system messaging. It's not the heart itself. So that can provide some solace, right? That can provide some, okay, my heart is fine. My heart is okay. I need to figure out, okay, why is my heart being tripped up in the first place? And this is where pattern recognition is important.
This is really good because there's two components here. So the first one I'm going to mention that you brought out, I think, is that many people with this type of dysregulation between their brain and their heart and brain, which of course many times it's dysautonomic, meaning that's where they're kind of, hopefully they find that out earlier. They can start to, by experience, they're feeling things in their body that you don't normally feel, that are below the level of conscious.
Yeah.
So they're feeling pulsatile things. They're feeling tingling, they're feeling cold and heat, and they're feeling heaviness or feeling blood pooling. Who feels blood pooling? But these people do sometimes. So when you're feeling those things, they're very disconcerting. And then you feel anything, right? Someone puts very low vibration on you. Oh my goodness. And then you start triggering this fear response.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how you're going to react. Fair, like some fair. And the awareness of that is important. Why? Why is the awareness that every sensation you feel is not part of the problem, or it's part of the issue, and I need to be aware that it's not life threatening? Why is this important? We mentioned the vagal system is the brake. That's the brake in the brainstem. There's a second brake. You know how in the car, well, the cars used to, you have the brake on the floor, you have the emergency brake. I used to pull it like that, right? It's like a little stick. There's another brake. The second brake is here, your frontal cortical ability to say, no, that's just vibration. My heart is fine. I've worn a Holter monitor. I've been evaluated. I'm self-taught. I've already been, my heart is okay. I know this is at 160, my heart rate. That's fast. I'm feeling anxious. All right, I need to reel myself. This is what does it, your frontal lobe.
Yeah.
But if your frontal lobe is offline, no emergency brake, and your vagal system is a bit weak because you've been struggling, it's going to be hard to bring that awareness to a point where it's going to be actionable.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I want to mention, there's many different areas the problem could be, right? It could be in the vagal system, in the brainstem. It could be small fiber issues like the signaling messaging coming from small fiber neuropathy people have. It could be in the baroreceptors themselves.
Sure.
So there's multiple areas that could be part of the problem. And the frontal limbic system can become part of the problem also. Like you had mentioned, if it was 50 to 60% of the problem, that's a big part, even if it's only 20%. If I can get 20 of control back just through the frontal limbic system with mindset coaching and understanding and awareness and an application, then I can get another 10% with breathing. And then I can get another 15 to 20% with modulating the vagal system and the baroreceptors. We're almost a 50% improvement or reduction.
Amazing. I love that.
Versus we're going to take electrolytes. We're going to be on a beta blocker. We're going to be with compression stockings. Okay, those might be very short, acute measures, but let's work beyond that to more functional restoration for somebody between this hidden conversation between the brain and the heart.
Yeah, I love that. I love that math. I love that math because it's true. It's not one thing, it's multiple variables that must be addressed for the person, right? So we can only take someone so far, they get to take themselves the rest of the way with the guidance, right? And we're not saying it's so easy to do. If it were easy, a lot of, everyone would do it, as they say, right?
Right.
So we recognize that it's personal development work along with neurological development neurological regulation. So we've got to consider those pieces, and it's not talked about enough. It's not talked about enough. And I think that we're discovering in practice and personally, but also in the profession, that, this is an important component for people's well-being. And you didn't mention it just yet, but we're also talking about, creating a sense of calm for the nervous system, right? Which is what you're saying. We have to think differently, but also what is required is to also create practices in breathing, right? To be able to breathe, to regulate, and change our thought processes. So it's all involved. And the good news is that this is all that we include inside of our programs, because we recognize that all of it matters. So I see, Doc, that you're struggling a little bit there with your feed on the computer. Can you still hear me or not yet? Not anymore. Yeah,
I can
you
hear
can hear
you.
me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Well, we're just about at the end here. So we're going to wrap it up. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap?
No, we'll touch on more of these things in the next one.
Okay, amazing. So thank you all for, staying this far. If you've been listening to the Neurocollective and you haven't yet rated the podcast, we would love for you to do that. It helps other people find this information, especially if you have found this useful. Please forward it to your friends and family. We love to continue to connect with those that need this information and are really searching for it. And we will tell you that by the time someone gets to us, almost always what I hear at the end of the first conversation that I have with them, I wish I knew you guys were around a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And we're doing our best to do the marketing pieces to get in front of the people who need this. But you can do your part as our audience members to share. And follow us on socials too. We're on Instagram and Facebook. We provide other content there. So until next time, remember that your body is always listening, your brain is always listening, and that you can heal and we can help. Take care.